Welcome, everyone. My name is Marjorie O'Toole. I'm the executive director of the Little Compton Historical Society, and it was really my great joy and privilege to work on this project this summer, this spring and summer and fall. There's a lot of people to thank. I hope you took a moment to look at the list of participants and the sponsors at the end of the film. We quite frankly have been really overwhelmed by the community support for our Everyone Was a Farmer project in general. This is one facet of that project, and it was specifically funded or funded in large part by the Ocean State Charities Trust, and so we're very grateful to them. Other funders also contributed, and they all appear in the list. I want to start by thanking our filmmakers, Clarkshire Media, which is Lily Derbyshire Clark and her husband Cameron Clark. And I'm delighted that Cameron is on camera because Cameron is usually behind the camera, so it's terrific to see his face. We've been working together on this, maybe since March, April. It's been a long time coming. And we knew we wanted to work on it through the summer when people were, sort of at the peak of farming. And I think it really paid off with some fabulous interviews conducted by Lily and gorgeous footage captured by Cameron. So thank you both very much. I also want to thank all the participating farmers. I said a little earlier to those of you who are here, the first to arrive, 31 farmers participated in the making of this film, 21 interviews, 31 farmers. Really wonderful and kind of surprising to me to see so many couples who are farming together. I think that's just terrific. Their kids are involved, just terrific. And important to remember that this is not every single farmer in Little Compton. There are more farmers out there. Some we might not even know about yet. And maybe tonight they'll get in touch with us just to join the master list that we're trying to create, contact list for all the people farming in Little Compton. And some, we tried very hard to get them to participate, and they were just too darn busy this summer. Some folks were just too busy to be able to participate. So we hope they'll see this at some point, and we hope that some of their thoughts and experiences are reflected here as well. So people are putting in questions into the chat function, which is exactly what we would like you to do. You could have questions for the filmmakers, Cameron and Lily, questions for the farmers in general, questions for a specific farmer. We'll be happy to relay those questions. And I think I'm going to start off with one. Certainly, as Lily was conducting these interviews, we saw certain themes emerge. Farming is hard, farming is rewarding. Little Compton is a unique place to farm. Those were very clear. And then there were sort of these sub themes. One that was really fascinating to me was the importance of interconnectivity between the farms. And I'm not sure it made it into the film, but I remember one farmer saying, in the olden days, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, there was a little bit more sense of competition between the farms. You kept your best practices secret because you really needed to in order to succeed. And that has changed over time. And there's a lot more cooperation and collaboration. And I wonder if any of the farmers with us this evening would be able to talk a little bit more about collaborations, cooperation within the farming community, an example of something that's working for them, or their hopes for the future that might continue to grow. And the farmers should all be co-hosts on this event. So you should, if you're a farmer, you should be able to control your microphone. Carter, what's your thought on collaboration in between the farms?
I think there's a good spirit of cooperation here. You know, Rusty Cabot kind of touched on this, that, you know, in the older days, there was a more wider ecosystem of support that existed. So a lot of it, you know, falls to the individual, but to the extent that people can share things and partner, it certainly makes it easier. I do that. I partner with a farmer just across the state line in Westport on Sodom Road, and use him to transport my animals up to the slaughterhouse in Westport. And then I'm also partnering with the farmer on Adamsville Road at the old Joe Palmer farm. He's got my brood sow and my boar right now. I didn't want to keep him on site, so he's interested in raising pigs and wanted to try it out. So it's a great way for us to work together.
Would anyone else, would any of the other farmers like to comment on collaborations that they're, Rusty took his mic off. Maybe Rusty would like to speak.
Yeah, hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
I think that the collaboration in Little Compton is great amongst the farmers, frankly. I don't remember growing up a bunch of guys keeping secrets, but maybe I just wasn't privy to that.
Maybe I'm exaggerating.
But you need to cooperate in order to get things done. There's I think the collaboration is fantastic in Little Compton.
And Craig raised his hand. So Craig, if you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to share. Let's see. I don't think we can hear you yet. Oh, unmute yourself, Craig. There you go.
I think I'm unmuted now.
Yeah, you're good.
Perfect.
You're good.
Yeah. What I like to say is years ago, I think that there wasn't enough land for all the farmers. That's why it was a little more competition. And now people are looking to have the land worked, and there's a lot more hay land available and corn land. But one thing that I really like about the farmers, like Rusty had said earlier, is, you know, when you have a tractor to be fixed, it's all the way to Pennsylvania. And if you know the right people and you work back and forth, you know, you can get the tractor down there and have it repaired and bring it back for, it's not cheap, but it's at least, you know, it's too bad we have Adamsville Diesel, Darren Souza, who will work on your tractor and is real good. But some of these newer model tractors, they need to go to the manufacturers, which is real hard because we don't have that anymore. But I'm really happy with the farming in Little Compton. We had really a great corn year this year as well. I'm glad to see there's actually more than 30 people actually trying to farm in this community as well, because we do need farmers out there. That's about it.
Good. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
Skip and Liz, thoughts on collaboration? And you're muted right now. So you might want to, there you go.
Yeah, the nature of vegetable farming, a lot of equipment, we don't really share as much equipment with the other vegetable farmers because the timing of getting crops in is pretty critical. And so,
You should have.
but other levels, a lot of times, I think the longer I grow vegetables, the fewer I grow. So I depend on people like Cole and Tyler to, you know, grow sweet corn when I need it. And when we're buying large amounts of boxes, and again, like Craig said, if you can share a truckload of things down from Boston, we're you know, working together in that way. And I think the camaraderie between all the vegetable people, even people in southern Tiverton, is pretty strong at this point, just because there's so few of us and there's so much potential. There's not that much need to be that secretive or worry about not enough people to support your farm. We're almost at full capacity when we're open on 3 days a week during the summer. And so I'm happy to work with the other farms, and we call back and forth quite often.
Do what we do.
And all over New England, we're collaborating with people up in Vermont and as far as north as White River Junction to buy equipment and get potato seed down here from New Hampshire. So there's a lot of cooperation. You really have to these days because everything's gotten extra expensive on the farming level as much as any other part of any other business. It's you have to be very savvy about getting things done as efficiently and as cost effectively as you can.
Would anyone else like to speak to collaboration?
Yeah, I would.
Adam, welcome.
Thanks. I really enjoyed the film. Working with other farms in town or living at other farms, my dad and I lived in the apartment above the Wishing Stone for when I was in high school, and just living on that farm for a while and getting to know those folks. Even though I'm not farming vegetables, they took me along to the New England Fruit and Vegetable Growers Conference one year. That's been really great to collaborate, at least intellectually, and also working with Sweet and Salty Farm for 3 years, and just being able to drive or bike to so many like great different types of farms in this community has been, when you're trying to put an idea together of what you want to try on your own, has been really, really great. And I feel like it's very unique to our area.
Any more thoughts on collaboration? And if not, we'll ask Jenna to start sharing some of the audience questions.
Sure. So the flip side to the collaboration question and the, previously kind of keeping all of your resources to yourself, is there now any kind of organized effort to recruit new farmers to Little Compton?
That's a fascinating question. Something like that was on my list, so I'm glad you asked. And and I think some of the folks, some of the farmer panelists are, without even being asked, using the raise your hand feature. That's super helpful. So Carter had his hand raised. Carter, what do you have to say about farmer recruitment?
Yeah, there isn't a formal organized effort right now, but there really should be. And it's a big priority for me. It's something I've been raising in town for more than a year. The first question is, what are you recruiting for? And, one priority would be for transition planning for people at the end of their careers who are looking at exiting farming or want to turn over their business to a new generation. They don't have somebody in their family who wants to take it over. And unfortunately, a lot of operations like that close just for lack of transition planning. And there's a really good nonprofit group in New England called Land for Good that operates as a matchmaker between property owners and would-be farmers, the ones that I talked about in the film, who might be first-generation farmers in their family. They're not inheriting land and they're looking for a place to go. And this is just a really exceptional town to be in to farm. Not only is it beautiful, but our growing season is fantastically long. We're close to big markets in Providence and Boston. So, the pitch wouldn't be really hard for people. They would come down here, see what we got, and they'd fall in love with the place. Another thing you'd want to recruit for is for people to farm idle land that needs farming. This town is just going to be prohibitively expensive for anybody who's getting started. You can go to Western Massachusetts or up to Vermont and buy good farmland at $2,500 an acre. You're just not going to find that here. But thanks to the Ag Trust, there's a lot of land that's been banked and is ready to be farmed. And if we had a concerted effort to recruit people, I think we could see a lot more farms here in town. We also, have people in town who are interested in farming more land, and more could be done to get them, on land that's available. But the deal breaker for people coming to town who might be able to lease land that's owned by others is the housing issue. And you can't farm land that you can't live on. At least you can't be a livestock farmer and do that. You can do crops, but just hearing Adam Yorks talk about how he lived in the barn structure at Wishing Stone. The question for our town, I think, especially now and when the real estate market is so expensive and really hard for anybody, with the middle income or below that to be able to afford to buy here, is how can this town, look at zoning in a creative way and create a new type of housing for young and new farmers to town? Can we look at barn structures that could be a combination of live and workspace, where the first floor of the barn would be for your farming operation and the upstairs is the residential quarters or an apartment? It doesn't have to be something you have to own. It could be something that the town could build and could lease out as the landlord and rent and control the property. So, there's a number of angles to this. It's an interesting challenge. I think it's something the town needs to do. It needs to be organized. I can tell you that there's no shortage of young people out there in New England who are using tools online like Farm Finder to try to find land that's available. That's the hardest problem for anybody trying to get into farming, is to find land to farm. And, we've got it. This place is just, too important not to be using it for farming. Down the road, with climate change and all the other things, there may be a time where we're not going to be able to rely on the Central Valley in California to buy all our food. So, farming skills could be needed in the future here a lot more than we realize. So, the good news is we've saved the land, but I think the next challenge is to get people on it. I see Rusty's got his hand up.
Rusty's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Ag Trust, as many of you probably know, and Carter has brought up some great points tonight, and we've talked about it in the past. And the trust in the town in general doesn't have an organized way to recruit farmers. We're not sure that we want to do that, but it is a topic of conversation that we're taking on in the trust, and we'll certainly work through the options and whether or not we want to formally do something, or if we do, how we're going to get it done, in order to make sure that from my personal perspective, at least, that we have farmers in Little Compton 50 years from now, and farming is still part of our community.
Great. And you just want to unmute yourself. There you go. But still, Tina's on tech. That's good.
Yeah, that's not necessarily a good thing.
I just wanted to add that the Ag Trust I think that is the best thing that ever happened to Little Compton, and the people there that want it really farmed and take care of the land. There's so much fallow land there that needs to be worked. And the more you work it, the better the land becomes. And to keep that land, growing crops and keep the farming going, and maybe even be able to have some of the land fertilized with the natural manure from the cows, and instead of throwing the other kind of fertilizer on it, might be a great thing. But again, I think there's farmers out there that'll work that land. I think that the neighbors around the property have to understand that the land is being worked and has to be taken care of properly too. Otherwise, it just goes feral. And once the weeds and the bushes start growing in there, it just makes it all the more harder. And I think that we do have farmers here that want to, plant commodity crops and raise animals and also vegetables and all. Like Skip does a real nice job with all that. He works a lot of property around this town. But that's really all I have to say.
I would like to say something. I grew up with 4-H, and there's no 4-H programs out there anymore. The ERI area where we are, there's ERI, SRI, NRI. They're all they're just falling by the wayside. There's no more really 4-H kids out there anymore. And I think when the kids learn early on, even if your parents are not into farming or animals, and there's programs like FAA in different parts of the other schooling communities. I think if you get more programs out there like that, there's a program in Portsmouth I think it's the middle school program right now. They're starting to work with getting greenhouses up and starting to work with local farmers and everything. I know just a tiny bit about that. I don't want to say too much because I don't really know much, but it would be great to have the schools getting kids early on to be interested in and having like a vocational program, kind of like Bristol Ag, it's
Bristol Agriculture.
Yeah, the Bristol Ag
Aggie School, yeah.
yeah, and if we could get that over here, that would be like a really good head start to more farming around here, I believe.
I think that I just like to add one, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you
Go ahead.
keep going.
No, I'd like to add something to that. Carter was talking about bringing people in. If you did have 4-H, and we'd be willing to have a 4-H group here, Tina and I, we raise
We both
cattle.
done,
Yeah,
he did
we're
cattle, I
feeding-
did horses, you know,
Yeah.
there's so many
But
4-H
that would
programs
have
out
the
there.
Little Compton kids more, you know, come rather than bringing in people that, I mean, I'm not against that, but I feel like you'd have the Little Compton kids if they had a 4-H group here, being able to farm their own property where they raised too, because I grew up in 4-H on Escobar's farm, Highland Farm in Portsmouth, where I grew up. And I mean, I hate to say this, but I learned more in 4-H about different things than I did in school sometimes because I was more interested in it, you know? And
Right, in 4-H and programs like that, and FAA, and you have to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Like you just can't go feed an animal. You have to like research and why you're doing it. So you know all the ins and outs of what your program is. It's just not showing up and walking an animal around. It's nothing like that. It's like you have to know all the science, hippology, and all of that, you know, confirmation of your animal and why it's good and why it's bad. Like it's all the ins and outs. And I think to get more programs around like that, again, up and coming, it would really promote more
help the
farming
farming, yeah.
in the
It's-
future.
It says Portsmouth Ag Innovation is a program within the Portsmouth School District. That sounds like what you were talking about.
Right,
Yes.
it is.
And
yeah.
it honestly
Thank
reminded
you.
me of the oral history interview that Marjorie had done with Lou Peary before he passed about the work that he was doing in Fall River, teaching the kids how to grow in a greenhouse.
Yep,
But one thing
very
about
important.
one thing about farming is you really can't go to school to do it. You have to be in condition, especially in the livestock business. You got to be able to work 7 days a week, give up the vacations and you know, and take care of your animals, because putting somebody else in the helm never works. And it, you know, it's
And family members don't always understand why you have to leave Christmas dinner
yeah.
to go feed your animals or not show up on time and everything. So it's a lifestyle.
That's
It's a
what it is. Farming
sacrifice,
is a lifestyle.
but it would be nice for younger kids to find the love early on and have an opportunity to see if they would like it or not.
Skip and Liz.
I was just going to say on the vegetable side, the greatest growth of farming in America now is these young farmers that only want to really work 2 or 3 acres. There's a plethora of .com, you know, pay me $2,000 and I'll teach you everything you need to know about running a vegetable farm. And I've noticed that one of the newest farm, Roots Farm, and I think Skinny Dip, both bought a house that had some acreage and then decided they would make a go with just 2 or 3 acres of land to work on. And that's in the vegetable side of things. That's kind of where it's going. There's a lot of vegetable farmers that are starting out as small micro farms. And the biggest hindrance to somebody taking on a 5 or 6 acre farm is just the equipment. The equipment is unbelievably expensive. And we're kind of at this historical moment in buying tractors. The tractors that are from the 50s are all getting harder and harder to get the parts for. And all the newer tractors, which have to follow all sorts of new environmental rules, are $60,000, $70,000 just for a 60 horsepower tractor. And so that's one of the biggest barriers. Is like either you start small or you have to have enough funds to start something bigger. And I think Carter and Rusty also hit a very important, I think the most critical thing for farming as a future in Little Compton. It's the labor housing or housing for somebody that's going to go onto a piece of property. Because we have a lot of different plots of land in Little Compton, but so many of them that the Ag Trust manages and owns have no housing on it. And so that idea that, you know, you have a multi-use building, and I don't know if we'd have to change the town ordinances to allow that, but that would be a huge leg up. Nobody's going to want to, you know, go and start on a farm if they have to commute from New Bedford or Fall River and try to come down with a rototiller in the back of their trailer and start farming. If we're really serious about getting farming going in Little Compton, somehow the Ag Trust, it's got to put some money and get some of the zoning laws changed so people can actually get a foothold where they can live and then have equipment underneath them where they start collecting and buying equipment. Because yeah, that's huge. I think that's when the Land Trust asked me what's the number one thing I think is important for farming to stay farming in Little Compton. I told them the last time they asked me that 5 years ago, it would be having water on the properties that we use. And in the last 2 years with COVID and the hard difficulty for people to get labor, I now think not having housing for either the person owning a farm or allowing people like Cole and I and even Tyler Young, we're short of help, and it's become a critical thing. And maybe we'll have to do some changes of the zoning laws to allow us to put in or find some place in town where we can have labor or low income housing for labor. It's huge.
Skip,
I'm
I'm
going to
gonna,
jump in
oh, go ahead.
with, well, this is a question that shows my ignorance, but many of the farmers use the phrase commodity crop as we were interviewing them. And could someone, maybe for other folks in the audience who aren't familiar with, you know, exactly what a commodity crop is versus I hear commodity crops and I hear vegetables. I don't know where you draw the line, or maybe there's some overlap there. You go right ahead, Skip. You're in the spotlight now.
I think a commodity, to me, I mean, silage corn, some people grow silage corn that don't even have cows. So that's a commodity. They're selling it usually not that far away to somebody in the next township. You know, how many tons of silage can they sell? So that's kind of a commodity. I guess you could consider that a commodity. But when I think of commodities, I think of people out in the Midwest that have 3,000 acres of wheat and soybeans. But it can be, you know, in some ways, sweet corn could even be a commodity. There are some people out in the Dartmouth area that grow 200 or 300 acres of sweet corn. That's all they grow. And I guess you could, since they're not selling it retail, consider that a commodity. But, you know, I guess if I grew, you know, with Pete Peckham is growing on a couple hundred acres of potatoes. So that kind of falls into the commodity side of the ledger. Whereas, you know, Cole and I grow maybe 4 or 5 acres of different types of broccoli and cauliflower. It's not a commodity. I may be wholesaling some of it to Whole Foods or some restaurants, but it's not in the commodity kind of mindset. Maybe Craig can speak more better about the commodity issue.
Sure, Craig, go right ahead. Unmute yourself.
You really don't have to say much about it. Skip hit the nail on the head with everything. Silage corn is called a commodity crop. And sold, like he said, it's things that are sold, and silage corn is probably, and soybeans and that kind of stuff is definitely a commodity crop. It's when you grow big amounts of it.
Thank you.
And we might throw Skip right back into the spotlight for this one. Is there an organization in the area that is similar to something like the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association?
Yeah, pretty much every state in the country has a NOFA, Northern Organic Farmers Association. And then after it, you say of Massachusetts, there is a NOFA organization of Rhode Island. But they pretty much stay grouped only in farmers that only want to do organic agriculture.
Mhm.
There's no kind of anything beyond that for conventional people. So there is an organization called that. Other than that, there's, I think somebody mentioned here, Farming for Good, or that helps farmers match with properties. But yeah, I think that's the only other one I can think of.
New England Vegetable Growers Association.
Well, the New England Vegetable Growers Association is kind of a omnibus for different organizations to talk to each other and work together.
Conferences every other year.
Yeah, they organize conferences every biannually, and yeah, the USDA has different modes of activities that they can do with farmers. The FSA helps people with insurance policies, and NRCS help small farmers get a foothold on their property by giving them discounts on building greenhouses and helping them with fencing and other things.
Great.
Go
Carter.
ahead, Carter.
Yeah, Marjorie, there's also a really good organization for young people who are new to farming for networking. That's the National Young Farmers Coalition. It has statewide chapters. There's one in Rhode Island, and they provide, meetup events. They've all been virtual during COVID, but they provide for a way to, for people to collaborate when they don't live in the same zip code, and share best practices and work out, thorny issues and get resources for lenders or equipment or repair people. So, if you go online and search for this, you can find it, and they have annual events throughout the year that you can go and meet people in person.
Great.
Do we have-
Oh, is someone else want to speak about organizations? More questions, Jenna?
I have one final question, and that is there any place where people can find a list of, if they wanted to go, buy something direct from the farmer? Because I know several people talked specifically about, direct to market sort of selling. Is there anything anywhere that lists out for consumers where they can get various goods in town?
The Ag Trust, when we decided, a year and a half ago, we were going to do farming as our theme this year, I talked to the Ag Trust, and they have resources online about who's farming and whose land is conserved. And that was a good place to start. But for us as an organization who wanted to contact farmers and speak with farmers, we found that type of list sorely lacking. So we've been creating a list. Jen has been working on it. Lily's been working on it, over the last 12 months with good contact information for the farmers that we know about. I think our list might be it, but please correct me if I'm wrong. And Skip has his hand up.
Well, the Rhode Island division of Rhode Island DEM Division of Agriculture has a pretty sophisticated list. Again, depending on how soon you started farming, if they do, just like, I think people that bought the apple orchard this year, they wouldn't be on their list, but they have a list of organic farms and conventional farms, and they have a pretty thorough list. A lot of people are probably on their list and not realize that they are, but if you're looking for, and they also have a large list of all the different farmers markets where people can go and buy directly from farmers that are all over Rhode Island, not only the ones that they run, but the ones that are run by organizations like the one I'm part of, which is the Hope Street Farmers Market Association in Providence. So DEM in Rhode Island has a pretty lot of resources. They have people that are paid to, know where you can buy eggs in Johnston and stuff like that.
Skip, would those lists differentiate between direct to consumer versus wholesale?
I've never seen the list for certain things, but I know at the farmers market level, yeah. I think I don't know if they would know if they were retail or wholesale.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Rusty?
Yeah, the Ag Trust, as you mentioned, was putting together a list of farmers in town, but it hasn't gotten to the level of who has retail and what they're selling. I think that's probably something we'll work on in the future, but right now I'm not aware of anything that lists the different retailers of agricultural products in town.
Our challenge was not so much understanding that folks existed or the name of their farm, but how do you contact them? And that's where we were struggling. So, we were, asking friends to share cell phone numbers and, hunting for email addresses. And I think that's been the most time consuming for us, is trying to find good contact numbers for the folks in town who are farming. And we're getting there. Lily just put in chat that she's willing to work on the list, to clean up the list that we have, and we can put that on our website for people to be able to use it.
Carter, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing. We haven't talked about the 3,000 people in Little Compton who aren't farmers. And Marjorie, this video that the Historical Society has put together, I think just does a wonderful job of educating those who aren't farmers, and people who may be new to town, who didn't grow up in a rural environment and maybe come from an urban setting or a suburban setting, have never lived in a rural place before. What this film really does in a wonderful way is it shows everybody that Little Compton always has been and is a farming community at heart. I mean, that was the first line that just hit me right at the beginning. And you can't watch this film and not come away from an appreciation for, what makes this town so special is the fact that we have a working landscape that's still working. We are one of the last coastal farming communities in southern New England, really maybe the only place, along with South Dartmouth and Westport outside the state of Maine where you've got farming at the ocean's edge. And that's really what makes this place special and unique. And if we lose the working landscape, we lose that identity, and then we become just another coastal town. You can go all throughout New England's coastline, 500 plus miles, and there's some beautiful places that rival Little Compton for beauty, but there are very, very few places that have what we have here. And I think Lily and Cameron Clark just did a wonderful job of showcasing this for people. So I hope it makes a big impression on the folks in town who aren't farming.
Me too. And I hope everyone listening and watching this evening, I hope you'll tell people to, go to YouTube, watch the film. I want to wake up tomorrow morning and instead of, 130 views, I want there to be 260 views. So maybe we can work together to make that happen. Jenna, do we have some more questions?
I do. Perhaps a point of advocacy for Carter and Rusty, and I know Adam's partner is involved in the Housing Trust, is someone asked, is there an opportunity for the town to focus on matching funds that might be available for constructing low-income housing to tailor a plan that's suited to young people interested in farming here in town? So I don't know what sort of opportunities and grant writing is out there, but something for perhaps the Ag Trust and the Housing Trust to work together on. What do local farmers think about Milky Way Farm or Aruda Farms growing corn in Little Compton?
Oh, Pete,
I'd say
good.
I'd say that's perfectly fine. I mean, there's not enough large dairy farms around in this area that will use that corn. So the people around here, I'd say, usually get enough corn for their operations, and then those guys are way bigger than any of us. So they're able to benefit off the land and use the corn that's available to them. Otherwise, in my opinion, I think it would just go to waste. So I don't see any issues with it. I mean, they help, those farmers can help the other farmers. They kind of share the benefits. So I think it's a pretty good operation.
Historically, the boundary between, historically, Tiverton families, Little Compton families jump the line an awful lot. So maybe it's a good practice for the future not to worry about the boundaries.
And some of
Very
Central Village of Westport, there's a lot of crossover with Adamsville. What does it really mean to be a right to farm community? And is that a common designation in New England?
Great, Skip.
Unfortunately, it seems to me that the right to farm designation in Rhode Island has not been that strong compared to, say, Massachusetts. I think it's in Westport, the right to farm has defended a lot of farmers along the West Branch when a lot of McMansions have gone up in various parcels and they're complaining about the smell of pigs or something like that. And the Westport agricultural community says that sign is all over our town, and if you build a house and didn't think about what was next to you, that's your problem. The right to farm is very strong here. Whereas in Rhode Island, I've heard stories again and again where lawyers and big money sometimes have weakened the ability for the claim that the right to farm is not as strong in Rhode Island. In Connecticut, I don't know what the situation is there, but I know in Rhode Island it's been a problem.
In our town, especially.
So is that something the people of Little Compton would vote to be a right to farm community? Someone explained to me once that we didn't have to do that because we already were. And I didn't think to question it.
Rusty.
Yeah, I think the reason that Little Compton doesn't necessarily have signs at the border like Westport does that we're a right to farm is because of what Skip alluded to. There's a Rhode Island law that is the governing law for right to farm throughout Rhode Island. Now, whether or not it's well enforced, we could have a discussion about that, but there is a law in Rhode Island that allows farmers the right to farm, and essentially that means that there is some protection from what would be considered frivolous lawsuits, for example. And Skip's example of odors from a farm or noise from a farm sort of irritating the neighbors was a good example of where the right to farm acts would come into play.
And that's great. And I think that fits with what I was told. Little Compton didn't have to be a right to farm community because the entire state was, I think is what someone was trying to explain to me.
There's one element of that, which is, stopping what are considered, public nuisances, which is, the stick side of regulation. But there's another side to being, affirmative for farming at the local and state level. And I see that our state representative, Michelle McGaw, is here. And that's looking at how to rewrite regulations in a way that encourages farming and look at things that maybe have become unnecessary barriers to preventing people from entering. I know at the state level in Vermont, they've done a wonderful job over the last 20 years of trying to rewrite regulations that were really written and rigged for large scale operations, big commercial producers. So say somebody who had thing like Walkers or Youngs who wanted to make jam, you know, the regulation said you couldn't do that in your home kitchen, and you had to go to a commercial kitchen for health reasons. So they had all these regs that just prohibited people from doing, you know, homestead farming the way it's traditionally been done. So they rewrote the rules that allowed this stuff to happen at a small scale. And as a result of that, you've really seen a revival of small scale cottage industry farming in all these towns across that state. And, you know, that's something that Rhode Island could look at here too, because it's stuff that's done at the state level, but also, you know, the town can help by looking at, you know, what are some things we can do that would encourage farming, and not just look at this from the perspective of what do we prohibit stuff that we don't want to have.
Jenna, any more questions?
I am out of questions for now. So I would say thank you to all the farmers.
Well, actually, I would like to,
Is there a type of farming or a specific product that might work in LC that is isn't here yet? I think is what it is. There's a typo.
Could you repeat the question?
I think because there's a typo right at the end. Oh yeah. Is there a type of farming or a specific product that might work really well in Little Compton that is not here yet?
Well, if global warming keeps going, we'll be growing coconuts here pretty soon. When I first started farming in 1985, it was when I really started, you know, doing acres of broccoli and things like that. I was hard pressed in the first 10, 15 years to get a broccoli crop that would make it to Thanksgiving. And now on a regular basis, we're growing broccoli crops that go almost up to Christmas without any protection. Again, as I spoke in the film, being surrounded by the thermal mass of the ocean, we have an amazing prolonged growing season down here. And so anything that falls into that category is, I think, brassicas, broccoli, cauliflower, collards. We grow about 2 acres of Brussels sprouts, and Brussels sprouts do amazingly well in Little Compton. It loves that kind of prolonged 28-degree nights. It loves it. So those kinds of crops. Potatoes do well in Little Compton too, because when people in the middle of Connecticut are trying to grow potatoes in the summer, like last summer, when it gets up to 105 degrees for hours during the middle of the day, potatoes don't like that. And so, and with the cooling ocean next to us, that's why Pete Peckham does so well with his potatoes, is the environment that we have here.
That's fascinating. Thank you. All right, Marjorie, take it away.
Well, but, you know, before we wrap up this evening, I think we have 6 or 8 of our participating farmers with us. And I just wanted to ask if there was anything, you know, sometimes you finish an interview, and you walk away and you're like, oh, I wish I had said, you know, X, Y, Z. So I wonder if there's anything that either this evening or during the interview process came to you afterward that you would have liked to share it, if you'd like to share something with us now. And again,
Yes.
if you use the, Adam said yes, and his daughter's raising her hand. So Adam.
She's raising her hand. We since the film crew stopped by back in April, we have since renamed our farm. We are now Bee-Ba Farm, and we are launching a website. So if anyone is interested in keeping up to date with what we are doing with our pasture-raised lamb and other future stuff, you could go to bebafarm.com and put in your name and email, and we'll send you an email when our online store is up and we have anything new.
Is that BEEBAA?
Yes.
All right,
A
great.
bee and what a sheep says.
You.
Yeah,
Love it.
that's it. I was really happy to have seen what everyone else in town, and I'm looking forward to meeting some of these farmers in town that I have not had the pleasure to meet yet. And yeah, thank you all.
You were the first interview, Adam. So thank you for breaking us in.
Yeah, it was good motivation to kick the sheep out of the winter paddock onto the pasture.
Skip and Liz had their hand up.
Mhm.
I'd just like to acknowledge you and all the people at the Historical Society for just doing a phenomenal job at, putting that. I mean, I'm going to go back again and again just to, without a lot of people crowding around, the things I wanted to read in the exhibition. And I thought, congratulations to Lily and Cameron for doing a great film. You'd have to go to California to get somebody pull something like that together. It takes there's a lot of editing and work on that.
Cameron is the silent hero
Yeah.
in all of this.
A great effort, and all of the people that work behind the scenes to make this happen. All the farmers don't always know who you are, but we appreciate what was done on our behalf anyway.
Yes.
Thank you.
That means a lot. Thank you.
And I'll also add, Skip, you can now read all of the panels on our website at littlecompton.org.
All right.
Okay.
That's very true. That was Jenna's big job this fall. There is we do, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, typically we do a temporary exhibit every summer, work really hard, make it as best we can, and then in the fall we have to put it away. So great to work on something knowing that it was permanent and it will be up, I'm going to say at least 10 years. We invested more time, we invested more money, more energy, more research, more people helped work on it. And I think it really shows, and it's just lovely to be able to keep it. We're already seeing local people bringing their house guests, which is exactly one of the things I was hoping that we would, I was hoping that would happen, that people would come back more than once, bring their friends. When they had company, this would be a place for them to go. And we are the farm exhibit is technically open all winter. There is no heat in the barn, but if you are hardy enough to go out there and enjoy the exhibit in the cold, you are welcome to do that. Anyone else care to share something that maybe they didn't get a chance to say during the interview, or got edited out of your interview and was your most favorite thing and it got left on the editing room floor? We'd love to hear from you before we say goodbye for the evening. No? All right. Well, that being the case, I think we will say goodbye, and thanks to the audience for tuning in. Thanks again, sincerely, for the farmers for taking part. I know it's hard to ask you to step away from your work in the busy summer, and so many of you were able to do that. We really appreciate it. And a special thanks to Cameron and Lily. They are just terrific to work with. I would do this all over again with them. So thank you. And do tell your friends, the video is available on YouTube. We might do a little bit more editing to make it a little bit shorter, and it'll be up in the physical exhibit soon. Right. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Marjorie.